agree. But that doesn't mean that there aren't legitimate voices on this. And so we want to hear from parents. We want to hear from Donna Trimble, who has been saying for a long time that this is really about the government stepping in the way of the relationship between parent and child. So I want you to hear her views. Then we will hear from David Eggen. And then hopefully we'll be able to go back to Donna and see whether or not there's anything that he says that puts her mind at ease. But I'm joined right now by Donna Trimble, Executive Director of Parents for Choice in Education. Donna, thanks so much for being with me.
Thank you so much for giving us a voice, and a voice on behalf of thousands of really concerned parents across the province.
Okay, so then let's talk about this decision. We'll find out a little bit more details about it, but it seems fairly straightforward that he's going to make it illegal for students to be outed to their parents. So if a student joins a Gay Straight Alliance, a teacher is not going to be able to tell their parents. What is your concern with that?
I want to start by saying that yesterday was a really sad day for a lot of parents across the province who still were convinced that the motive of Bill 10 was anti-bullying. And now they recognize that the present government is using Bill 10 as a tool to isolate themselves from their own children, and especially from a group of children that is at a really high risk of self-harm. It's a really dangerous precedent, and I think that if citizens across the province don't recognize that, then we have a lot more to be worried about. What Minister Eggen is talking about here is legally forbidding schools to be responsive to the needs of individual students in individual situations. And what he's claiming by doing so is that these clubs and counseling in school is a safer space than the loving homes of the vast majority of these children. If Minister Eggen really cared about the needs of children, he wouldn't be focusing on diminishing and narrowing dangerously the resources provided to these particular students. He would be talking about expanding those resources, expanding the care provided to these children, and he would ensure that no school is coerced into not informing parents when they have children that need support in school.
Can I ask you this? Because I don't know if you know how many of your parents that are involved in your group have children who have come out to them. But I'm going to put it to you in the way I did to one of my colleagues this morning, is that with the LGBTQ members that I have known, gay people I have known, it's like the parents are the last people they want to come out to. They may want to come out to a friend. They may want to come out to their peer group. They may want to come out to a trusted adult in their life. And it takes some time for them to come to terms, because it changes a family dynamic. It means that you're not going to marry somebody of the opposite gender. It may mean that you're not going to end up having kids. And I think there's a lot of kids who feel like their parents would disapprove, which is why they don't want to tell them first.
Okay, so what we're talking about here, we need to recheck this conversation, because you're talking about nuance, and I would agree, and our parents would agree, that there is room for a conversation around how parents are drawn into this conversation. But we have heard from parents of children that have LGBTQ youth, in fact, some who have been put in very, very bad situations that I can't obviously give names of these individuals, but they've contacted us and let us know, you know what, I'm not for this legislation. These children need us. And every single one of these situations, including an adult who had a conversation with me, I had an adult that had a conversation with me that said that until he was able to communicate his needs with his parents, nothing got better for him. That was the step that really cleared the way for him going forward and made him feel like he was truly grounded in his life. So is there nuance? Absolutely. But what Minister Eggen is talking about is enforcing a law that removes all nuance. Enforcing a law in schools that will not allow schools to be responsive. What if we have a child who the school is well aware is in danger, but that child has not given permission yet for the school to tell the parents? Then what can that school do if they are put under this law? Never mind the fact that the law, breaks law. I mean, schools are supposed to be representative of parents, not the other way around. So the other thing I would say is studies back this up. I mean, the Trans Pulse Project confirms that supportive parents are key, the number one most important aspect for transgender children. In fact, they give statistics, and they say that depression for children that have supportive parents drops from 73% to 23%.
Okay,
and suicide, hang on, just let me finish one more thing. And suicide drops from 57% to 4%. Now, the argument would be if a parent isn't supportive, then what?
Exactly.
But the bottom line is the vast majority of parents are very, very loving and supportive. And so drawing them in at the earliest possible moment should be the idea.
Okay, just
in these situations.
I have one more minute before I have to switch over to the education minister. So tell me, how do you think parents should be drawn in? What would be the mechanism for that?
There needs to be local autonomy. I think that schools and teachers and staff need to be able to be very responsive in individual situations with individual students. And there should be no law banning them from informing parents without the permission of the child. And I would ask Minister Eggen, why is there no mention on top of all of this in the nuance of age appropriateness? We are the only province in the country that has this type of legislation that was created by Bill 10, where there's no age limit. We're talking about children as young as 5.
What do you think would be an age-appropriate number? I'll put it to him.
You know what? I think that that's a conversation that has to happen when Minister Eggen is actually serious about doing consultations with parents and schools and actually having those conversations, because they're not happening.
Okay, so stand by. I'll let you, we'll have you listen with me to my interview with Minister Eggen, and then I'll come back to you for a quick comment if you've got the time.
Sure.
Donna Trimble is my guest. She is the Executive Director of Parents for Choice in Education. We'll take a pause. We'll hear from Minister Eggen, and then we'll also hear from you. So if you want to line up to call 403-974-8255. Also send me your text, and I'll read a few of those out. Stay with us on News Talk 770. All right, so let's get a little bit of your feedback to set this up. I've got somebody saying, I totally agree with Ms. Trimble. This feels like a law passed to create controversy. The circumstances of decades ago are very different today. Education is the most important, and better communication between schools, teachers, and parents. This law is totally inappropriate. Another person saying, I can't believe you're not standing up for parental rights, Danielle. The tiny fraction of bad parents does not justify government isolation of children from the family. Deal with the very small minority, not paint with a broad brush. However, we got these on the other side. Talk to your kids. That's it. If kids aren't comfortable to do that, it's not the school's job to decide the child's discomfort is not valid. Another comment, if the teenager does not want their parents to know, then I guarantee there's a good reason for that, and it should be respected. And another saying, if I was to have come out to my dad in high school, he would have beat the hell out of me. So this is where the rubber hits the road here, right? Is that, yes, I accept that the vast majority of parents are loving and accepting and will work through it with their kids. I get that. But what do you do about those who are going to end up being rejected, being kicked out, being beaten, start cutting themselves, commit suicide, try to commit suicide, get a drug addiction, go homeless? Like, that is where I think the government is trying to make sure that they're protecting that group of kids. And we'll see from the horse's mouth in just a minute. We've got David Eggen who's joining us. He's the Minister of Education. Minister Eggen, thanks so much for being with us. Have we got him? Minister Eggen.
Yes.
Oh, we got you. Yeah, I sure can now. Thank you so much for being with us. So first of all, so you heard my audience very polarized on this, but let's start off by talking about why it is that you felt that you needed to make the announcement now that you were going to make a legislative change in the fall.
Well, there's really two reasons, Danielle. First of all, as you know from what was Bill 10, the existing legislation was very good. It was a big step forward, but we noticed that there were some gaps in coverage for private schools and for schools to make a constructive framework for safe and caring schools. And then the second reason, as you were just sort of outlining with your opening comments, was around GSAs and the confidentiality around GSAs. And again, we didn't see it so much on the ground on a individual school level, but we saw comments from Jason Kenney and others around outing kids that do choose to join a GSA. And, you know, the essence of the GSAs is that you create that safe and caring environment, and it's often in very difficult circumstances. And so that confidentiality, or if a student chooses to keep that confidentiality, then we thought it was important to kind of strengthen that, because as I say, it's we've come a long ways. We've really, I think, made a lot of progress, but I don't need and I can't have it undermined by sort of shrill comments about outing kids that choose to join a GSA.
Okay, a couple things then. I think a lot of parents are under the impression that a GSA is an anti-bullying club to create a safe space on a school ground so that kids feel accepted by their peers. But it sounds like the interpretation of the government is the GSA is to protect kids from their parents. And I think that's what people are reacting to.
Yeah, I think we need to clarify that whole thing because it's a safe and caring environment. And, it's a very difficult circumstance. I mean, I was a teacher. I know that, kids that, are trying to work with their sexuality and so forth. And, often it's a very sensitive thing around with parents and with the general community. And so, the best thing is to build communication and communication skills and safe places for people to sort of nurture that. I think, like you say, the vast majority of people, do that and build that with their kids and know what's going on. But I mean, sometimes, coming out as a different sexuality is a very sensitive thing, and so it's just a question of having that kids to make a choice for that confidentiality, and that can change over time. I mean, we want to build a safe and nurturing environment for people to feel confident and be able to make the next steps.
Well, let me ask a couple things. You said, as a teacher, did you ever have a student come out to you? And if you did you bring in the parents?
No, I never had that actual circumstance. But I mean, you could see it. Like I taught for 20 years, right? And so, I guess the main thing was to be sensitive, right? Sensitive to individual circumstances. And so, and again, I think on the ground, teachers and administrators recognize the sensitivity around this, but I just wanted to make sure that we caught the rhetoric and dealt with it in a educative way for the general public too, that we want to create that safe space. And like you say, some kids they might be in a compromised situation by coming out to their parents.
Wouldn't it, if you wanted to create a safe space for a student, not just in the school grounds but also in the broader community, wouldn't it make sense to have the teacher in the GSA act as a conduit to help them come out in a broader way and bring the parents in and bring the community? And wouldn't that be sort of a healthier way to be able to tell the kid you're not doing anything wrong?
Yes, and then but part of that confidence and trust is the right for a student to choose, right? Choose that situation and choose that circumstance, right? And and again, we've been dealing with lots of situations over the last couple of years where you see the temptation for backsliding on the rights to a student to have a safe and caring environment, right? And I've seen lots of different circumstances where maybe schools are trying to push push kids in different directions, right? And so you start from that position of it's a safe and caring place where a student has the right to choose to be protected, and then you move from there.
You mentioned that in some ways it should be an individual decision, an individual relationship between the parent and the student, or the student and the teacher, and I get that. But what happens if a student is going to self-harm? Because I've met some of these kids at Camp Firefly who've attempted to commit suicide. In those situations, the parent needs to understand what kind of risks their child might be at and some of the reasons behind that. Would you say that would be a circumstance where parents shouldn't be brought in?
Well, I think you start from the position of a student's choice of confidence, and then you go from there, right? I mean, I'm not an expert in social work and so forth, but you have to start from that position of trust. Otherwise, the whole construction of the GSA and the safe place and the safe relationship starts to break down, right? So when I have people like Jason Kenney saying that they would out kids on their discretion or through some level of law or political interference, then that's wrong, right? It starts. We've done a lot to build progress here to allow. for people to realize that this is a good idea, and then for schools to support GSAs and so forth. But it's so easy for that edifice to crumble by people talking about the erosion of that trust by saying that they would out kids that would be in a GSA.
Okay, so what about the age appropriateness? I mean, if you've got a child in distress who's 8 or 9 or 10 years old, and we've seen kids, transgender kids, start the transition as young as that.
Yeah.
Are you still saying that it should be up to the child to decide whether they want their parent brought in? I mean, I can get that with older kids, mature minors, and kids who are over the age of 16. But when you're talking about youngsters in elementary school, I don't know. I think that you're going to have a harder time telling parents they shouldn't know.
Well, and again, it's from the beginning of that position of trust, right? And you build that position of trust through confidence, right? And then then things can go from there, obviously. So, we believe that it's important to strengthen this position, right? And so that it's like it's a cornerstone of a safe and caring environment. And we believe that combined with, like I said, the other part of the legislation that I'm looking at is to expand into all schools that receive public money, right, from the province of Alberta, and we believe from there we'll have something that we can work with.
I think people are worried that this is going to extend to other things. We're in the middle of a fentanyl crisis, as one of my listeners points out. A couple of them point out. So if a student came out to a teacher saying, "Hey, we've got a problem with drugs," I think people are worried that now that you've set this precedent of, no, you got to keep things secret, that they wouldn't be looped in on something like that, or if they were drinking, or if there was some other issue that requires parental involvement to be able to help a child through it, that now you'll use this as a precedent to extend it to other things.
Yeah, no, I mean, I want to reassure anyone who might think that, there's a categorical difference between someone using drugs and alcohol and this destructive behavior, and then working with someone's sexuality, which is a normal, healthy thing for them to normalize their place as LGBTQ person, right? I mean, those two things are fundamentally separate, and we have to make sure we understand that. So, I mean, I can understand perhaps that as an initial reaction, but when you think about it for a minute, one is a health issue with a normalization of socialization of LGBTQ students, and the other one is destructive behavior with drugs or alcohol.
Does this extend to policy for other clubs? I mean, there's all kinds of clubs on campus. Is this the only one where parents are going to be forbidden from knowing that their child's involved in it? Or is that sort of the general rule, is that kids can join any club that they want on school grounds, and the rule is teachers won't tell?
No. I mean, this is specific. I mean, we haven't built the legislation yet, but I mean, this is the direction of the GSA legislation that I'm looking at, is to have this as a position for the Gay Straight Alliances, or QSAs, right? And so, I mean, on the other side of it, of course, you join the basketball team or whatever, and there's no special notification for that, and so forth as well. I mean, we've seen over the last couple of years some definitely some flashpoints, right, of problems where they were notifying the whole school as a special thing that there was going to be a GSA, and it inflamed a lot of people, right? And so, we need to try to make, as part of building a safe and caring space for students, we need to try to normalize it as well, so that we're not inserting things that are just not there, right?
Well,
and so, I mean, it's not a sex club, and it's not a some kind of secret thing, right? It's and it's an alliance as well. I mean, you have kids joining these things to they're on their own choice, right, to demonstrate their solidarity with their friends and peers who might identify as LGBTQ.
I guess the last question is legislation really needed? I mean, you've identified this is the only thing that is being singled out for specific legislation. If you can trust that parents and teachers can figure things out on a whole range of other issues, why can't you just trust that parents and teachers will figure out when parents need to be brought in?
Well, again, it's, you saw how what used to be called Bill 10 unfolded in the legislature. We were together then, and, we came a long way with it, but it's a very heated sort of place, right, where politics intersect with the safe and caring environment for children, right? And so I want to make sure that I build a solid place for kids to feel safe and get that message out now, right? That you can join the GSA and you will not be outed, right? I mean, we see that as inflamed rhetoric out in the media now and through some political choices that people are making. And so no, I mean, I need to build a solid space where LGBTQ kids can be safe, that students can stand in solidarity with them, and and we keep the communication open. Of course we do, right? I mean, that's the essence of a solid education for students, for a solid learning environment in schools, and a whole school system in general. So
all right.
The two can exist together, definitely.
Minister, thanks so much for explaining your position to us. I'll just go now and see what our listeners have to say about it, but I do appreciate your time today.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
You got it. That's
Bye.
Minister of Education David Eggen. We'll also hear from Donna Trimble once again, see if she's persuaded once we return on News Talk 770. Stay with us. All right, guys, you were rapid firing me texts, and I was trying to get as many of those questions put to the minister as I could. What do you think? Are you convinced? I'll get my first response from Donna Trimble, and then we'll read out a bunch of texts. And if you want to call in, 403-974-8255. Donna, so what do you think?
I think that everything that Minister Eggen just said, a lot of which came from two completely different directions, strengthens my belief and likely has strengthened and turned on all of the worries of parents across this province around this legislation. He literally said that one of the reasons he's pushing for secrecy law, and that's what this is in schools, for our most vulnerable children, is to catch rhetoric. His words, to catch rhetoric. This is the overreach of a government that does not trust the parents of this province or the schools of this province to work together in partnership for the care of these children. And I think that it is shocking that we are even having a conversation about removing the right of parents to be engaged and involved. And I would finish off by saying that we have heard from teachers that are feeling like they have been placed in an incredibly untenable position. They feel like there are already support systems in school for genuinely vulnerable students that they have to follow by law, and this type of legislation will cause them to have to choose between following the law that says reach out if the child is vulnerable, or following the law that says do not, you are forbidden from bringing in parents to the conversation. So the bottom line is we are now living in a province where we have a government that feels very comfortable saying that they have the right to forbid teachers from approaching parents when they, as the adults in the situation, deem that child at risk.
All
you
right.
even asked him about self-harm,
Yeah.
and he still said it should be up to the child.
Donna,
And
I'm
as
sure
adults, we wouldn't allow that.
I do want to hear from some of our other listeners, but I do.
I'm shocked.
I can tell that, and I'm sure people who are equally shocked would like to be able to follow your advocacy
you
work
betcha.
on this. So tell them how to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Tell them how to
Thank
do
you
it.
for giving us a voice.
Yeah, but tell them how to do it. How do they contact you?
Oh, sorry. www.parentchoice.ca is where you'll reach us. And we actually do have a Vote Wisely tab I want to let you know about in the top right corner, where we have trustee listings as well as a breakdown on the UCP leadership race. So we'd love to hear from parents. Please reach out to us. We're standing with you as the loving parents of Alberta, and we understand that you want the best for your kids.
Donna,
so we will keep speaking out for you.
Yeah, appreciate that. So
You betcha.
www.parentchoice.ca. We've got Trevor on the line and a number of texts that have come in. We'll go to Trevor first. Trevor, go ahead. What's on your mind?
Hi, Danielle.
Hey.
First-time caller. Thanks for taking my call.
Hey, you
I
bet.
gotta say, I'm absolutely shocked by what I heard. I don't know if this is a fair analogy or not, but I go, when was the last time in history that kids were taken away from their parents, or the right of parents to sort of oversee, maybe control the environments, help their kids, that kind of thing? We're going through a whole lot of truth and reconciliation right now around our Indigenous kids being taken away from their families for generations, and now this government's proposing to exclude parents from the raising of their kids. Same thing in my mind.
Okay, Trevor, thank you for drawing that connection. And, it is true. I mean, if you interfere in that relationship, you don't know what kind of harm it's going to cause 10 or 20 or 30 years down the road that you may end up having to address publicly. Here's the other side of the story. Good morning, Danielle. Tried to email you, but cannot find the address. She ended up texting or doing a print screen on this email that she sent to me. In any case, I want to call you, but I'm not prepared to make my son a topic. And calling may do that, so I'll text you. My son is gay. He came out to us when he was 26 years old. He desperately did not want to be gay. He tried so hard not to be, but alas, he is. That sort of gives you an indication of where she's coming from to call it an alas. Continuing on, I was supportive of him his entire life because deep down I knew he just couldn't tell us, or himself for that matter. He didn't want to disappoint us. If he had a GSA, perhaps he would have gone, but perhaps not. I don't know. But I do know this. If a teacher had told me against his will, that is a breach of trust and not what I would want for him. We need to let these kids do this at their own speed. Many of these parents will try to convert their child, turn them to God, or kick them out. I know. I am a church-going mom. People see being gay as something you catch. I'm in favor of the NDP's legislation only because there are so many bigots in this province. So, I'll never vote for them. But on this issue, I agree. So there you have it. That comes from a parent of a gay kid, supportive of it, but also pretty conservative. We've got Brent on the line, and we've got Randy. I'll see if I can get to both of you, but we'll go to Brent first.
Hi, Danielle.
Hey, go ahead.
My daughter came out as gay. My ex-wife is very religious. Everybody in her community that I know, the people that are most evil to them are their parents. And that's the whole issue here, right? It's the same. These kids are vulnerable, same as kids that get abused. That's why parents don't want to spank their kids anymore, right? I really believe that the parents, I've known parents that said their gay demons are being brought into the house, right? And it really makes me sad that the government is being, like, somebody needs to protect these kids. And it's from their parents. That's the horrible thing.
Brent, thanks.
Right? I understand parents definitely need to raise their children, but there are a lot of parents, and I'm from a family like that.
Brent,
right? I support my daughter, but my ex-wife doesn't. My daughter got married, and they never even went to her wedding.
Wow.
Right?
Brent, thanks for sharing that with me. Let me just sum this up by saying, like, I think that there should be a mechanism for those loving parents to be brought into the loop, and that's where I'm worried that there isn't one. But I'm taking the point of my last couple of commentators that there is a reason why they don't feel it should be carte blanche. If you join a GSA, you're going to have the parents brought in. Sad to say it.
Danielle Smith, weekdays starting at 9:30 a.m. on News Talk 770 Calgary.